With me here is Emmanuel Ohanwe. He's a product manager. He has top experience around product manager and product marketing. And sometimes I'm even trying to wonder how you manage the both role at the same time because you could, isn't it? You could, right?
Yeah, I do. I could.
I know, because I saw in the product you actually code. So I was wondering, this man is beyond just behind the scene, being the product. He's also in the phase of selling the product to the market, which is quite very interesting. It's like a end-to-end, process for you, right? His expertise lies at the intersection of product strategy, CRM automation, and workflow optimization. Emmanuel has built and scaled digital products that are currently being used in Nigerian markets. You also have systems and teams that have solved hard problems across continents. Top of his product are around edtech, fintech, proptech, govtech, and emerging sectors like blockchain and decentralized finance. Right? Welcome on board, Mr. Emmanuel, and thank you for sharing up once again. Right? How's your day going?
Thank you, Bello. It's my utmost pleasure. My day is going fine. And how about yours?
Yeah, very well. The weekend has been nice. Good weather here. It's a good moment for this kind of discussion, especially where we begin to have a lot of startups talking about AI. If you open any products, anything you see is, I'm bringing on AI this, I'm bringing AI that, I'm bringing AI this, I'm bringing AI that. These conversations are beginning to be like, come on, what's going on here? Are we AI competition? Are we doing AI related this right now? And everyone is trying to build an AI solution. So generally, what's your perspective around AI? And why we settle down into the topic, right? What's your perspective around AI? Like I said earlier, the topic is talking about AI in African startups and balancing human-centered market with marketing automation. So what's your perspective around AI, briefly?
Many thanks, Bello. Greetings to our beloved viewers, whichever part of the world you're watching from. Like Bello rightly said, my name is Emmanuel, and I play at the intersection of product management, AI, marketing automations, and of course, business leadership. Beyond just the speaking, the conversation, the presentation, also sits a man who has his hands on the floor, actively building, optimizing codes and deploying frameworks. And when you begin to see the emergence of AI and how that has become a topic across the world, across different sectors, across startups, you would, for some persons who get to pay attention to diligence, would have to sit back to now ask themselves, how best do we deploy AI? It's risky to jump into innovation that you don't clearly understand, an innovation that has not clearly, learned or imbibed your local context. I was speaking to an AI, and I will not call him an AI though, but an entrepreneur who wanted to deploy something in the space. And the first question I asked him was how well has this solution you want to deploy into your environment, how well has it learned the local context of your environment?
Nice.
So AI, it's a beautiful innovation, but then especially for Africa or the global south, I call them the global south, emerging markets, emerging economies would have to understand, the hybrid model of deploying AI. Because when you delve fully into AI, you might even, it might cause more harm than good trying to deploy technology that would have given you more profit, but that balance can help you now create something really magical and unimaginable in your space. So it's a beautiful innovation, but you need to deploy it with context in mind.
Nice. So, Emmanuel, would you see that there are different theory, there are different, philosophy around the emergence of AI, right? Why we have some school of thought to talk about it in the context of, this is a capitalist movement to help solve the problem of unavailable employment or unavailable labor, rather, in some, the North Pole in economy, because by North Pole, I'm referring to the first world nations, right? We saw what happened during COVID period, where quite a lot of enterprise were short of staff. For example, let's take a look at even recently the COVID issue. Not even that in the UK, for example, where we have the issues of the EU, the British, governments, pulling out of the EU, and quite a lot of European, professionals had to go back to their state of origin, and then it allows so much of it gives a lot of gap within enterprise who are building businesses in this part of the world to now say, okay, fine, what alternative do we have to use to not get into this kind of situation anymore in the future? There's another school of thought that talks about the next 20 years where population may be stringed and there are state efforts to reduce world population, right? For the sake of this context, for example, same-sex marriage may affect reproduction, and in a long run, it will affect labor, right? Because of course, how do you give birth? How do you, how do you give birth to the next generation if same-sex marriage is being popularized? You get what I mean? So
mm,
this school of
mm.
thought is quite very, very scary, that there might be the next customer who will give birth to the next customer, who will give birth to the next staff, who will give birth to the next, labor, who will give birth to the next, so because all of these things are value chains that is really our family really play a role in coming to talking about the market as a whole, right? So the third school of thought then is in the context of, okay, this is the real context of what it is by some, what would like conformists we consider it to be a pure tool of change and productivity in the context. Okay, fine. See, this is a solution we're trying to deploy to reduce the tension among human labor, or to fill in the gap in human labor or skills, right? So, what school of thought will you want to you really want to lay to settle on? Because it seems as though talking about AI overall, now we're not talking about it in the context of Africa now overall. What perspective do you think best suits into your own personal philosophy?
Interesting models you just theoretical models you just outlined, and that's some deep thinking I've gone into that. But personally, I get to see things from the lens I see the world. Um,
Okay.
I believe that different truths can coexist. All right. AI, for instance, for some people would see AI as it has come to create more jobs. Some other persons are seeing AI that it has come to take our jobs. But the way I see AI is that AI is an enabler, and AI could only be an
Mm,
enabler to someone who has a clear understanding of where he's headed. So a clueless startup founder, a clueless
yeah.
business owner, the first thing is not
Yeah.
AI. So you need
Yeah.
to co-create. You need to co-create with a fellow human who is a step ahead of you, who has some level of local intelligence. And then when you've gotten clarity, you can have clear understanding then on what should I outsource to AI, what should I keep to myself, what should I keep running on. So it can mean different things for different people. This is how I see the AI, in business. Have your local intelligence, get
Yeah.
clarity in what you're
Yeah.
building, and
Yeah.
that can happen by co-creating with humans, experts, and the likes. And then you can now decide based off of what I've learned, what then do I, outsource to AI to maintain on or deliver for me. So, but the first step is not jumping into AI. It multiplies your confusion.
It multiplies the confusion. What I like about you is the way you use English language. Honestly, yeah. So that's a very good nugget there from Emmanuel. He said you mentioned local context twice in the last 10 minutes. Right, this local context you're talking about, I would like you to go deep into it because you're an African. So going into local context. So from your experience, basically, where do you think AI, in African startups, where are we getting it wrong, right? And I would like you to expatiate on that, and not just that. I also want to we're going to get to that. Where are we getting it wrong right now? The model of practice, the ethical procedure of it. Where are we getting it wrong compared to what should it be the normal aspiration of how AI should be practiced in African context? Because you mentioned context twice in the last 10 minutes. So could you dive more into that?
Interesting. You see, if I was to make that list, it will be endless,
Okay.
because it's a case by case situation. But I'm just going to approach it from three broad contexts. Is a fact that firstly is that one of the ways startup founders or business owners in Africa get it wrong in the use of AI is that sometimes you see businesses automate even before they understand. So they get into automation quickly before they understand. That's a critical problem. And
Hmm.
it might be the reason why the expectation you have on AI would
Yeah.
never be met because you see what side by side what your Western colleagues are doing with it, and you just want to eat on it, who can sinker, swallow it, collect who can sinker without necessarily having clear understanding. So what do I mean by automating even before you understand? You listen
Hmm.
to some self-acclaimed marketers who say, well, what you need to do, AI is here, just run your ads, create
Yeah.
email marketing that gets to reply emails, create one chatbot that responds to them and the likes and nurture. But you don't understand that there are some business models that will require you to speak with the customer. I was building a workflow for a client in California, and at some point I had to slow down to advise him that, see, in this workflow I'm building, my thought is this, that we have segmentation of customers based on price models. What do I mean? If you allow me build this workflow for every customer, we might lose some customers. So these customers because the model is designed in a way that before it gets into the system, you already know how much will be coming from that deal. For customers $7,000 and above, I think it makes sense to route these customers to you as a founder. Some customers just want to feel, the founder's voice. They want to have the human interaction. They want to lay hold on some social proofs, even before they go ahead. All right. So one thing that we get wrong is automating even before we understand. And then the second thing is outsourcing your thinking. So you outsource thinking to tools. The thinking, you do the thinking, and then you co-create with AI. All right. You do the thinking, and then you co-create, because AI writes the copy, AI selects the channel. But what you fail to understand is that a 15-minute conversation with a group of customers can change the channel you would have used.
Nice.
It can change your sales copy.
Nice.
All right. Yeah. So you outsource thinking to tools instead of, internalizing thinking yourself. And then the third thing is just assuming that AI understands local context. AI can, for instance, assume that you live in a society that has a lot of trust, so there are no trust issues, and it gives you recommendation in an ideal situation. But your environment is not ideal. You want to replicate the European business model in Ogbomosho. You begin to
You want to recreate European business model in Ogbomosho. That's really funny.
So those are how.
My goodness, these are huge conversation in here. Wow. I just knew you're the right person for this conversation, because I was like, who can I bring in to have this conversation with? To back up to what you said. I was in a meeting there, a group of tech entrepreneurs. Then the meeting happens to be that it's part of a community of founders, product developers, product enthusiasts, self-acclaimed marketers, like you mentioned the other time, right? And then somebody was asking a question around what are the major challenges entrepreneurs face, right? And how are they dealing with it? And besides that, the emphasis was now made on tech entrepreneurs as to why entrepreneurship. You get what I mean? And then everybody was asking them, they were giving answers to it, poverty level, profit maximization, and all that. Then I dropped into that conversation. I said, this conversation is for you to now defend. If I'm saying what is right or wrong, you can attest to it from your own point of view. So, well, I don't know how we all say entrepreneurship, but the actual context of entrepreneurship is to solve three things. Number one, poverty. Number two, unemployment. And number three, inequality. Right? If anything you're selling, anything you're offering, the business model you're introducing to the market, if by the virtue of going into the root contribution of that business to the society, and you cannot meet any of these three, you're not an entrepreneur, right? You're just there to maximize the best of the best, and then you have nothing to give, right, back to the society. So then somebody now asked me a question that, well, if I'm in this kind of interpretation, if I give this kind of interpretation to entrepreneurship, what then is my take to AI and automation? Because they seem to disrupt the current level of, for example, I mentioned unemployment, right? People are talking about how do we give, you said earlier, your self-acclaimed marketer saying, give everything to AI, it can help you do this, can help you. And I was also like, see, there's a problem here, because the understanding of AI from the way I see it is not the way you all see it here. There's a serious problem. And if you as a founder, if you don't understand AI from the level of co-creation, then there's a problem, because how would you tell me you want to automate all your process? I mean, you're selling to human being. Human wants is certifiable. Human behavior are unpredictable, right? Where do you put the place of relationship? Where do you put the place of connection? Where do you put the place of empathy? I mean, so, and then we had that conversation for a long time. There was debate left and right. Instances of this further went into how startups have been built. For me, BFG, for example, was built as far back as 2018. Bro, I built BFG with co-creations of students who serve as volunteers with me at the early phase of the business. Right? Oh, this one was my schoolboy, this one was my schoolboy, this one was my school daughter. Yeah, let's come together. Let's think about this idea. What do you see about it? Does it make sense? Okay, now let's build it. And we were doing it gradually, face by face, until the level where the business began to outgrow their current potential, and it was now time to get real professionals. Right? But right now, we see founders, the first thing that comes to your head is, boom, AI should help you think. AI should help you. AI should help you run everything. Yours is just to be a one-man business, and you're making millions of naira. It's good for you because it's a good revenue stream for you. But come on, you're not solving the problem, because those guys right now we use far back in 7 years, they're doing so well right now in their own space. Why? Because somehow we've transferred skills, we've transferred knowledge, right? We've transferred, whatever it is that best fits in at that level. We transferred experience as well, right? So, do you see this conversation I made to be relating to what you are saying right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Because the thing is, I tell people that you can't sell to customers you don't know. So,
perfect.
These are customers you don't know.
Yeah.
And you outsource everything to AI, including identifying who the customers are, including even speaking to the customers. And you just want to your work is just to prompt. You can't sell to customers you don't know. And you in entrepreneurship, when you see people like Tony Lumelu get to empower 5,000, empower entrepreneurs with $5,000. When you look at the core, core essence of doing that, you would see that it is basically to build businesses that will build jobs and lift people out of poverty. So you will see that on how he measures his impact. He measures how many jobs that these entrepreneurs have created. He measures how many cities have been lifted off from poverty, and then of course how much of revenue they've generated. So I mean, what you said is absolutely correct. You, as an entrepreneur, you should be meeting different needs. Your job, your business should be able to scale enough to get in people who will be employed, and as well create some sense of economic activity in that society or community you find yourself, which eventually get rid of poverty or whatever that looks like poverty around that space.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I want to build on one of the things you said earlier before I gave my own iteration of a meeting I attended. You said earlier that most people outsource their thinking to AI, right? And then building on that, maybe there's a mistaken view about that there's a moment in which AI outperforms human thinking, right? Maybe. So, if we were to put this in context, can there be genuinely a time where a moment, or at what point, at what scale of use would we say AI is the best point of access to solve this procedure of thinking or procedure of thought? So, or let's say human decision making, for example, right? You're trying to make decision making procedure in your level of business. And mind you, what this context here is in terms of marketing. And I'm very happy you mentioned the area of automation and the workflow you're trying to sell to one of your clients in Canada regarding the marketing model you're trying to sell to them, which has to do with not all customers need to go through this workflow. Some have to come through you. I love that idea. So, could we say there's a point where, right, AI has the best decision making processes to compared to human decision making? So, if there is, what will it be?
Beautiful. That's a very beautiful question. You see, and by the way, yes, that's California, not Canada. You see,
okay, California.
The landscape, yes, the landscape of the startup ecosystem. When you look at M-Pesa, for instance, in Kenya, when you look at Money Points in Nigeria, these guys have, when you look at OPay, they have core technologies. They might not have the best of technologies, all right?
Okay.
But what they've mastered is local intelligence. Now, nobody's trying to. I mean, it to be out of context to say humans would think better than AI, because when you engage artificial intelligence, you'll be wowed by the kind of results they bring in. But what we are saying in the African space is that you can guide AI. There has to be some level of local intelligence you bring into the space. So when you see, for instance, when you see OPay, see Money Points, they understand that we need local agents to go on board these local women, local marketers into the space. AI will not do that job for me.
I agree.
All right. So when you go to some markets, you ask the woman, you say, okay, send them for my OP. Send them. That's a Nigerian parlance for those of us who are not Nigerians. It's a Nigerian parlance that means send it to my OP. That woman obviously didn't see any adverts, didn't engage any ChatGPT to say ChatGPT what bank and ChatGPT say OP. A local person walked up to her and say, and pitched Opay to her and said, Opay will help your business. You can collect money and it's very easy. Your phone number. Share you cram your phone number for her. They say, yes, I cram my phone number. Simple, the local. So while some businesses might be there, fintech, they're saying we'll create the technology, ChatGPT will go here, disburse this, disburse that. There are some key people who are on the ground, local agents, they have the technology you have, but they also understand the place of local intelligence. So there's a place where your local intelligence will play a role, and there's a place where AI will play a role. When you have huge data sets, you want to analyze it, you can co-create with AI to analyze huge data sets. When you want to do some level of maybe automating repetitive workflows, repetitive business process, you can bring in AI to automate all of that. But when it has to do with clear business model differentiation, when it has to do
Mm.
with
Mm.
clear revenue model development, when it has to do with clear consumer segmentation, consumer persona, these are things that you need to go by yourself or pay an expert to go do that for you. And then when you get that result, you can now begin to have some clear understanding of your business, where you are headed, and then what AI can do and what it cannot do.
Wow. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Thank you so much for this insight. In the last 26 minutes, we've been talking about AI versus human, right? And then you've given a very, very deep explanation around this. And then for the sake of those who are listening, it's clear to establish that there are limits to what we can use AI to achieve if we really want to build a real business. Real business, not the one for a show glass business, a real business. And one point you gave really it gave me a wild impression, because you know what it means for you to have the best infrastructure, and yet you
Have
still
local agents.
what would make me more surprised when you mentioned them using their phone number as their account number. It's really crazy. Like, AI can give you that kind of decision making process. Because you know what it means for you to be, hey, I don't know my number for head. What I mean is that most local buyers or most local sellers do not know their number offhand, right? Because they see no need for it. So you are trying to bring them out of the informal market to go in, because most of them don't really have bank accounts. Pro now. They don't have the time to start going to the bank to go and queue when Oshogo market is opening every day. Who will stay in the shop, right? And then if at all you want to make them to onboard into your central accounting system, then make it easy for them. The personal play a role. Okay, fine. This time around, we're using your phone number to create the account. Imagine. And then you can access everything from your social number of code, and it makes it easy. And that's a very strong customer segmentation and differentiation, duty there that you must mention. And AI can give you that personal preferences, right? It requires human interaction. It requires human engagement to be able to solve that kind of real problem. And that is where real business comes in. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for that. So going into further conversations, right? Because we have just few time left. But however, we'll see how we can cover a lot, and because of the time. Now, looking at the context of AI, right, as a technology and the African market landscape, right? Now, the consumer behavior you mentioned earlier, right, where you've given a little brush on this, but I want you to go deep as well. You talk about people using Western consumer behavior pattern to build business in Africa or in Nigeria, right? And then, could we say it's out of ignorance, which I bet you disagree? Could you say it's out of laziness to associate with the local, customer to know what they really want, the pain points? Could we say it's just as a result of the fancy of, I'm building something with AI, I'm building something with AI? What understanding would you attach to this problem, and how can it be best solved?
Interesting question, right there. There's something I call the bandwagon effect. Is that some persons, they are never ahead of technologies, they'll just follow the trends. So this is what people are saying. You come to social media now, everybody is an AI expert. Everybody is doing one thing with AI, coaching with AI, and all of the likes. And people who are not properly trained for where they are headed. And that's why entrepreneurship is not for everybody. I was speaking to some young people who wanted to build business post-COVID, sometime in 2021, where I was called to manage an accelerator program for businesses that have suffered pandemic and those who were trying to pivot and the likes. And I was telling them that, see, if you want to go into business because you are trying to make ends meet, find a job. you need to, yes, find a job. Entrepreneurship is not for the lily livered. It's not for, you have to have a strong mind, have strong heart to be able to venture
I
into that
agree.
space.
I
And you
agree.
have to have some level of understanding on how to use the requisite tools that are available around you. When a new technology comes up, jumping in first is not the first thing to do. Is to understand all your own context. Because there's a lot of assumptions that some of these technologies make. You know, you can make an
Mhm.
assumption, for instance, to say that, okay, um, you could just sell this to 100 people, but you know that in the environment you are in, selling that to 50 people is heavy work. It's difficult because there's a trust issue. So
Trust issue.
trust index is one thing that people don't pay attention to. So
Mm,
it tells you
mm.
so easy. It looks like a plug and play until you go to the market. The market will slap you back to your house and say, my friend, go and go and conduct market research before you.
Trust.
So
Talking about trust, that leads us to the next question because trust index is very, very vital. To me, the last I had a conversation with one of my friends, and I said trust is an intangible asset.
Mhm,
Guy was trying to say, how do you mean? I said, okay, real business is not built on capital. Business are built on trust.
mhm,
That customer have to trust your product for you to have. I trust that this product will give me what I want. This product will be able to function the way I want it to function. You know what it means for you to go buy paracetamol when you're having headache, and you trust paracetamol to help you solve that headache, right?
mm,
So it's not about I don't care about the manufacturer. I don't care about. I just know that this thing can solve my headache. It's trust. And if it doesn't solve it, it becomes paracetamol is weak. I need to get ibuprofen. So trust is actually the landing point of sales. And then talking about trust, most Africans have that issue. They want to scale, and while scaling, they lose trust. You see in the context of startups who raise funds, who raise money from venture capitals, and then they have the fund, they have the capital, they have everything it takes to have a growing business, but yet they still fail. I don't want to mention any startup name here because it's not as though we're trying to bad market anyone. Do
mm.
you know what it means for you to still have money and still fail? It's crazy, bro.
Yes.
How do you explain this? People will say, "Oh, I don't have the money to run the business. That's why the business is not growing." Well, some people have the money and yet still fail. Trust index as a factor here. How can African build real business, right, without losing trust, right? To make it more easy for you,
Beautiful. I
African
think
market is built on. Okay,
no, I think I get the question.
thank you, thank you.
Building a startup in the African space without losing trust. And
Trust, yeah,
like you said, I concur to that. That a lot of startups have lost trust. So your business was even doing well before you brought in AI. So when you brought in AI, you now relinquish some of the things you're supposed to do as a founder or business owner, and then you now begin to wonder why some of these customers have now moved to the next person, the next competitor
yeah,
who is doing what you're
yeah,
doing. While
yeah.
there is I call it like the three trust layer model. First is the human entry, where
Okay,
yes, human entry. There should be a level of human interaction that happens at the front of your business. It's the reason why even customer rep, customer representative, MTN, you have your AI here and they have you called MTN and MTN would not have that human voice that will speak to you. They would have blocked the human channel. No,
mm,
let's think about it. Think about
yeah,
MTN, think about Airtel. I've called
yeah,
Airtel several times. I was having issue with my router, a few days ago. I had to
yeah,
call Airtel. If I had not spoken to a human, I would have just ditched my Airtel router and looked for the next, telecommunication provider that has some form of human interaction. So no matter how we evolve with AI and the like, there will be some business models, that would ensure that you have that human touch at the entry point, because people want to hear familiar language.
mm,
People want to hear familiar voices.
yeah,
All right. People want
yeah.
they want to lay hold on some social proof. All right. And they want to be able to have like some sort of relatable storytelling when you communicate with them. I advise startups that at that point where they come in, when you've now, established that, okay, they are now serious, they've been converted or whatever, then you can now bring in some form of AI, for automated FAQ, responders and the likes, because now you've won trust and they are now a hot lead. Like I term them. I term them hot lead anytime I'm building
Leads.
a
Okay,
workflow. Yes, I term them hot
okay.
lead. And then we can now have the last part, which I call the human escalation. So the first one is human entry. The second one
Mm-hmm.
is AI assistance. And then the third one is
Okay.
human escalation. So the human
Mm,
escalation is where, the payment is not working. I should be able to speak to a human. The button is not working. Call to action. I should be able to engage to a human. This is not, I had a poor service, I didn't like the product. I should be able to speak, because it becomes frustrating when you give me a very poor service. I can't speak to any human to pour out my heart. I will look for the next competitor and go and patronize. And where we now get it wrong is that we will now have an automated feedback model to say, okay, rate us in 5, in 1 to 5, rate us. This person already had their mind made up, and they will rate you
Yeah.
1. You will now call. You are trying to wake up a dead lion. You will now call and say, oh, sorry, we saw you rated us 1.
Mm,
The person had made up their mind. So before they could rate 1, can we have
yeah.
a human,
Yeah.
interception that intercepts between a distrust, an angry customer, and the rating channel? We have a human that gets to quell it and say, okay, so when they now call, they can now say, okay, well, because a human spoke to me, instead of 1, let me just
Yeah.
give you 4.
Yeah.
I will give you 5.
Yeah.
I just give you
Oh,
4 because a human spoke with me. So that's a layer model, I think.
wow, this is a very good layer model, bro. This layer model is very, very resourceful. Human entry at the level of, early phase of the marketing approach, where they are trying to seek for inquiry. They want to know more about
Gain
that product.
trust.
They want to know about that service. They want to gain trust at that level. You have to get human involved, right? AI assistant to help you with the reiteration process after you've win that
Mm,
trust, after the deal
mm,
has been won. And there's a
mm,
time where you want to have maybe 24 hours response rate for them on any
mm,
FAQ answers. I
mm,
mean, that is where
mm,
human. And then the last one is human escalation to help them solve real problem that has to do with what, maybe what you've promised them that they did not receive.
mm,
And they're
mm,
not hungry. So you need
mhm,
human to help solving that also, not AI. Wow, nice. Nice. Honestly, that's conversation you made regarding calling customer care, and then you have option for either AI to talk to
mm,
you or a real
mm.
human.
A
My
real human.
wife used to my wife used to make me, she used to laugh whenever I'm talking to I have a telecom company here too. Then when I made a call, I would just say, hello, I'm so virtual assistant. I can help. And just like I just ease and drop. I'm not talking to just I say, just imagine the demeaning factor. A real human being. And he's not telling me I should speak to a robot to solve my problem. I mean, is that how shallow I am? Is that how I'm not
I should as well have an AI that communicates my problem to you. So
exactly.
AI should be speaking, because
Is that how ridiculous I have become? Because if I'm very valuable in society, you will tell me here to respond to me. And it's true. Because it's funny, right? And and it's already a class divide. I don't want to go there. It's like it's a class divide around this thing. But then let me go there anyway. So going to the next level of let's go into the practical reality check, because people will watch this episode of video will say, "Oga, what you're saying is not relating to what we're facing in reality. Things are tough. As a founder, we're trying to raise funds. There's no money. We have to make do of what we have, right? We don't have money for marketing, we don't have money for hiring labor, and then now we're having AI and automation, and now you're saying that we shouldn't, looking from the angle of that reality check, right? If an early stage African startup with limited data, for example, and budget is asking you whether you should invest in AI for their operations and automations, what will be your answer? And if it's whatever it is,
that's
just
a
help us go deep into that. Yeah.
it's a very dicey question, because you don't have budgets, you don't have
Yeah.
data. So I think that the safe route. I was speaking to someone, I can't remember who that person was, but I know he's a business owner who um wants to run Facebook ads, and every time she gets little dollars, she will just go and press the sponsor ads. There's this button. If you have a page, you say sponsor the post, click sponsor post, and her money will just go down the drain. So when you have that little money and you have little data, you need to be mindful of where you invest it. And one of the advice I would give is to slow down with AI,
Okay.
because you might quickly put in money. Something happened to me. Somebody
All right.
told me there's this platform called WebSim. This one happened to me personally. So this platform
Okay.
called WebSim, and I was trying to build something, and I was having issues building it. I had an option of going to properly learn this thing, or going to meet an AI. So the person told me WebSim. Oh, sorry, I wasn't supposed to call the name. I'm not trying to demarket WebSim though. But told me, go to the AI, does this, does that. I went in there. I even put in some dollars there to do. I didn't get what I was waiting, what I wanted to do with it. I didn't get it. I had to still go through the manual route of learning what I wanted to do and deploy it. Then when it was month end, we were now trying to, deduct money from my account again, renewal for the next month. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I logged into WebSim to really find a way to deactivate my account. I didn't find any way to deactivate my account. I froze that because you can't deduct. I paid money for something that I didn't get. I didn't get the value for. All right. So you have small budgets, you have small data. I would advise that you co-create with humans. Sell firstly manually to 10 to 50 people or 50 to 100 people. Before you create the Uber for food, you need to first of all deliver with tricycle or deliver with motorbike first. There is something that happens when you engage with customers. You deliver repeatedly. You understand persona. You will take note of repeated patterns. You will take note of consumer behavior. There's a lot of intelligences you will gather by just doing that delivery yourself before you can now. It would even inform the kind of coaching you will give delivery people when you eventually have delivery people. You can have that 50 to 100 customers as a sample size. When you see people who do statistics, they tell you have a sample size because you cannot speak to everybody. You cannot analyze all the whole. So have a sample size. Off from that sample size, you can create a model for the large population. In that case, for a consumer, you have those first customers as your sample customers. You interact with them, you gain some level of, some of them will have a way they want their food to be packaged. So before you create that next, some persons, will have this fun way of saying, what I'm creating is the Netflix for agriculture. I'm creating the Fiverr for the agriculture you're creating Netflix for. You've not interacted with a farmer who can't even purchase a hoe. You don't even understand their farm to farm model. You've not, you've not, so there's a whole, the first thing first is to go manual, interact with them, have what I call, there's something I call the concierge MVP. Have what I call the concierge MVP, firstly, and then based off of that, you can gather that data you don't have, you will gather raw data that is not on Google.
What data?
Because you obviously concluded you had low data because you had searched everywhere on Google, searched everywhere online. You didn't get the data that speaks to your local context. How about now interacting with those customers, 10 to 50 of them,
Yes, that's
deliver to them, manually. You get to see how they even give you feedback, the objections that they bring towards the delivery you are giving. That way you can now recreate some form of retention strategy. You can talk of retention strategy for customers you don't know, customers you've not interacted with. How do you retain them? Netflix for agriculture, Fiverr for mechanic.
You're very mean in this conversation. You're very, very mean. But to be honest, I understand I understand your pain, your the issue, because most times it's really very annoying when you see most of these founders who have this kind of limited and shallow thinking about entrepreneurship. And then it's as though if our forefathers have done it this way, I'm not sure Dangote would have had over 50,000 capacity of employees on his site today. If this is how you actually have that limited, circle of thoughts around how to build a real business. Honestly, you mentioned how to get real data for somebody who wants to build a startup, who wants to build a business, an early phase startup, who doesn't have funds, who doesn't have market, what's it called, attraction. And you mentioned it's very, 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 precise about you have to be at the front line of the business. That is very, very important. Being at the front line simply means that you have to get yourself involved, interact with the people. Even like you mentioned, it could be 5 a day, right? It could be 2 a day. But the compound effect of those 2 in a day, for example, you're doing 2 in a day, by the end of the week, you already have 14. That's 14 people's data there, right? Real data, real human data. And one thing about these data is, it does not expire. I'm telling you, even though it's historical, even though the trend is historical, you can use that historical data to inform your future, the next line of action, right? And that's one thing about it. And AI won't give you that. AI cannot extract. It only gives you scenarios. And scenarios is not real data.
Case studies.
Yeah. Case studies. And that's not real data, right? So, which is very, very interesting to hear from you. Honestly, this will be the last phase of this. And then, what will be your advice for founders, for entrepreneurs, for managers, right? Who are within the swamp, condition of, too familiar with all of these things, all of these tools, and they're now losing their consciousness, right? They're losing their entrepreneurial skill. They're losing their managerial skill to these things because, as little as writing a proposal, you need to ask AI. As little as doing anything simple that requires your own personal thoughts, you have to also ask AI for. So people are beginning to lose their consciousness, and it's not really going to help building real talent in Africa. So what advice will you give us, right, in terms of balancing this, within the ecosystem?
So if I'm to thank you so much, Bello, thank you really for having me. If I was to summarize all I've said, it's really difficult, but I'm trying to put it in 2 lines. Firstly, that I put out a post or either today or yesterday, and I was saying that just for this conversation anyway, and I was saying that AI does not create clarity, AI scales clarity. So as a founder, it's something you need to be like have that. There's nothing you take out of this conversation. Take that out.
Yeah.
AI doesn't create clarity. AI only scales clarity. And if I was to rephrase what I just said, I'll put it this way: that AI scales what works. AI scales what works. So that's my candid, very swift, and for the sake of brevity, feedback and closing statement for founders on the call, and who would also get to
Wow.
watch this recording. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much, Emmanuel. It's really a good time with you. It's a whole 48 minutes banging these hot, responses from you. And then I can't just, I have to listen to this over and over again. And honestly, thank you for your time. Thank you for making yourself available for this session. Thank you so much. And we'll catch you in our next episode. Cheers.
Not a problem. Pleasure is mine. All the best. Yeah, bye. Okay, yeah, bye.